I think when we work through the gates of heaven, we'll have a chance to look back and go, that's what was going on. Because in the moment, it's like, what the fuck, man? Like, what is this thing? This is just a shit show. My first sex act was at 4, and I was trained to be very good at those sorts of things. I was taken to parties. I was exposed to pornography at a very early age. And then when I had recall of it, my entire world imploded. I had a very successful business traveling the world, high-level business consultancy and speaking. And I lost it all. I lost my first family, my first wife, estranged from my children, total life implosion. I am grateful for what I've been through because I've experienced grace and unmerited favor to a level that people unfortunately never would. I am as relentless and resilient in pursuing my surrender as I was in pursuing my works.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Humankinder podcast. I've noticed that a lot of the conversation in the trauma space today is all about the individual. It's about my journey, my recovery, my nervous system. And that work is beautiful and necessary. But for a lot of people, we can do that work for a long time and still feel a sense of displacement, a sense of disconnection. And that's often because, along with the disconnection from self, there can be a major disconnection from others, from communities, from place, from lineage, from country, and from the divine. And my guest today is someone who's left no stone unturned to recover from the events that happened to him. And he is really an example of that beautiful arc of remembering yourself, remembering your place, remembering your country, remembering your connection to God, and this journey of coming back to yourself and growing beyond what happened. He also helps others to do the same because of the power of his story. And he's many things. He's an author, he's a poet, he's an activist, he's an educator, he's a speaker, and he's someone who has really managed to turn his challenges into art. Dr. John King, welcome.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm so good. And
Good.
sir, you are someone who has lived many lifetimes in this one lifetime, right? And you've packed a lot in. Could you give people a sense of your story and where you're coming from so they can understand a little bit of placement here up front?
I loved what you said at the beginning, that trauma in a lot of ways, and because we have to, by the nature of overcoming it, deal with it in a singularity, but it is not a singularity because the impact of what was done to us as opposed to what was done by us ripples out. And I think that's a very important part of understanding. And just to make it clear for your listeners, I'd really see my life in 3 cadences. John 1.0, John 2.0, and I really feel I'm entering John 3.0. And at every one of those things has been a very distinct moment that has caused something. For John 1.0 entering into John 2.0, it was recall of 14 years of childhood sexual abuse, or what we would call trafficking. And entering John 2.0 was understanding my Umbrani or Indigenous heritage in Australia and what it means to have country, to go from orphan to tribe. And so this whole journey now, stepping back a little bit at 62, I can see the tapestry start to weave. And I loved your mention of the divine. I think when we work through the gates of heaven, we'll have a chance to look back and go, that's what was going on. Because in the moment, it's like, what the fuck, man? Like, what is this thing? This is just a shit show. And so I really am in that arc, brother. And it's fascinating. It's not easy, but it's fascinating to watch unfold.
Yeah, it is fascinating, and it's so refreshing actually to hear and also to feel someone who is empowered as a result of what happened, because we're not talking here about small little things like the sort of conditioning that everyone picks up. It's like, my parents were a little bit colder to me whenever I wasn't a good boy, and The teachers weren't that nice, and I got a little bit of bullying in school and all that. And not to downplay any of those things, but there are levels to the game when it comes to trauma, right? You've got these little bits of conditioning in the ways we all are. There's sub-threshold stuff, there's phobias, there's all this stuff. But then there's like extreme complex PTSD, big events, and also chronic PTSD. And so to help people understand just where you came from, can you speak into a little bit about what those early events were like for you?
Sure. My first sex act was at 4. I was engaged in a sexual act, and I was trained to be very good at those sorts of things. I was taken to parties. I was exposed to pornography at a very early age. There were the sorts of things where any one of these things you'd look back and say, okay, that was sexual abuse. And that's what happened to me, mate. I had these little images, like little frames of old millimeter film, and then it came together all one day about 16, 17 years ago, and I realized, well, this just isn't normal. Because up to that a place in time, I never had context for it. I just thought this was the way you did it. You watched your female caregivers bathe. You're engaged in these acts. So, growing up, it was like that for me. And then when I had recall of it, my entire world imploded. I had a very successful business traveling the world, high-level business consultancy and speaking. And I lost it all. I lost my first family, my first wife, estranged from my children, total life implosion. And that was about 18 years ago. And I've started to build back from that now.
Yeah, it's just like, it's just harrowing to hear that sort of experience, like my human heart on one level is like it's breaking with you when I hear those experiences. And it's like, can you take me inside the experience of someone who wakes up to having that much pain, and you've had this high-flying business and it's all starting to crumble to the ground? It's like, what is your inner world like at that stage?
A constant fear. Scared of everybody, scared of everything. I developed a stutter that was so bad that I couldn't go into public. I was so fearful for my children that if they went and stayed at a friend's place, I'd park outside. The woman I was married to at the time, she'd go to the shops, and I'd have to drive to the shopping center behind her and just make sure she was okay. And the challenge with all of that is that my constant fear was interpreted as controlling. I wasn't trying to be controlling, I was actually trying to survive. I was having these 24/7 nightmares, these day visions. Every waking moment is a replay of an orgy or of something that was done to me. And it's very difficult. It's like you're drowning in China and you don't speak Mandarin, and everyone else thinks you're just going for a swim. And the volume of your voice gets louder, the volume of your actions gets louder. And all you're trying to do is communicate, I'm not coping, and no one hears you. And it's that unseen, unheard aspect, which is particularly an issue for men. Unfortunately, we're comfortable talking about women and girls being abused. But to talk or bring it up as a man, you're a pariah instantly. Men don't do it, and men don't have a place. I live in America now, and out of all of America, there is only one house for boys that have been sexually abused or trafficked in the entire nation. One. And there's thousands of shelters for women. It's still not a conversation, or it's a conversation we've restricted to gender politics as opposed to human equality. And I imagine it's the same in Australia. Still in Australia, I was back there just for, I spent a lot of time out bush last couple of years. And nothing much has really changed. There's a little bit of a conversation about mental health, but it's all very shallow. The men's shed. Like, what the hell's that? Like, okay, dial blue for wanker. I don't know. I don't get that. Like no man I know is going to do that. Men don't communicate that way. And so that's one of the challenges we have, is trying to have important and real conversations around these things.
Yeah, what I hear in what you're saying is that we have still a very immature understanding of this stuff. All right, a very surface level understanding, because when you speak into that experience of being someone who's suffering so much internally, but the outward manifestation of it is something that people are saying that's controlling, that's aggressive, that's all this. And then you start to look at what we penalize people in this society for being, you start to see that what we're penalizing people for being like, whether that's putting people in prison for things, when we're looking at how people show up in relationships and we're condemning them, it very much often comes back to them on the inside suffering and being in pain and they're hurt. And they don't want to be like that, but it's the only version of reality that they feel like they can survive in. And so can you speak a bit into that, that compassionate balance, being compassionately meeting someone and saying the reason that this person, right, is being controlling in this relationship is because they're so full of shame and fear and they can't access self-love. And yet their controlling actions are causing destruction on the people around them. How do you balance those two worlds in a punitive society where we just say, you know what, court order, you know what, jail, you know what, drugs, and just medicate them?
It's really difficult, mate. Yeah, because you can get into a cycle of excuses, and I've worked very hard as never to being labeled as a victim of anything. I think that's one of the things that's kept me sane through this whole process. But unless you label yourself a victim of something, you often can't get the help you need or the care you need to get it done. I'm a victim of this, therefore that entitles me to that. When I was back, I mentioned that I was connected to my Mbrani, my Aboriginal family, for the first time just a couple of years ago. And to go back into a place like Warramungu, Tennant Creek, and you see generations of systemic alcoholism and violence to such a degree that there is no normal. There is no sense of anything. The challenge I had, and I was there for the yes vote, and this is not a commentary on the politics, but I want to make a commentary on the rhetoric. The rhetoric I heard was, and I grew up in Australia. I spent a lot of time there, and I managed to take some of my friends out back with me. Now, understand these people are in their 60s, and they have never talked to an Aboriginal in their life. They've never met an Indigenous person. They've never been to our homes out bush. They've only seen the, welcome to country, which annoys the hell out of everybody, including Mbrani people. It's like, what the hell is that? Like, we don't do that. We certainly don't get paid for that. Bring some goanna and some kangaroo and, a packet of Winnie Blues and we'll, welcome to country. So it's definitely not that. But the rhetoric I heard around the yes thing was a total lack of understanding for what it's like to be a sovereign people and have everything taken from you from generation to generation to generation. And when I was talking to my brothers and the stories I was hearing was literally about how Mdre's granddad was an Afghan camel trader. Therefore, he was a little bit lighter, the blackout policy. Therefore, his mother was raped. Therefore, MJ was removed. Therefore, his sister was raped. And you can literally stack this for 7 generations of no stable family, no stable home, no stable income, no stable future. So take race out of it altogether and just make it some sort of vanilla human being and do that for 250 years. Now, common sense would tell you that the impact on that, if it was just a single family that experienced that the impact would be devastating if that was the only experience they had for 7 years. And all I wanted people to do was think that thought, now apply it to an entire race of people, and maybe have a little bit of empathy. And so I think that flips over into the wider conversation about mental health and the result of the manifestation of things like, habitual sexual abuse. I'm not talking about you and your cousin having a fiddle behind the shed when you were 14 together. I'm talking about statutory rape from before you could walk, for up until all through your formative years. That has such an impact on a person's soul, their identity, their way of viewing themselves, and their way of viewing and interacting with the world. In fact, I would go so far as to say that you don't actually know who you are, that what you've got are these people in their 30s and 40s, and for most men, recall happens between 35 and 45, which have no idea of who they actually are because everything has been broken and beat out. And so here they are in their 30s and 40s, and they're shattered human beings who have pretended to get on for so long that they don't know who they are and how to interact. I know that's a bit of a long rave, and but that's really where
Yeah,
it is.
no, I love it. And I think you paint a really powerful picture of just what that does to your inner world. Because in general, we're not that good at understanding our inner world and working with it, right? We're very focused on the external and what do we need to do and how we show up and everything. But we don't understand that all of that comes from what's happening inside us. And so much of that is unconscious. And so when your unconscious has been programmed by all of these events, it means your nervous system, right, which is 500 million years old, right? It's sensing everything in the environment before you're even have a chance to be consciously aware of it. And if that nervous system grew up in an environment where everyone else was messed up, right, and struggling and in pain, and then it's been tuned to that level, and then it continues to get more of those experiences. Plus, you layer in the ancestral pain that comes all the way down the track. When you meet a person who's had that experience, if you don't understand and can't empathize with that, then you'll never develop the compassion and the love to be there for that person and see them in their fullness. And if they don't get that, then there's no chance of them starting to heal. And I think that's one of the biggest tragedies is that the very thing that we need the most to heal is love. But the very outward projections of our trauma push people away from us, and people are uncomfortable in that space. And so it just takes ourself waking up and saying, you know what, I'm not going to get what I need from anyone else here. Very unlikely. How do I start to give it to myself? How do I start to love myself? How do I start to work with myself? And so I'd be very interested. You mentioned that you spent 15 years and over $300,000 finding tools to start working with yourself. What was that journey like for you?
That's a great question. Thank you. It was one of desperation, and it was very decisional. Very decisional to get up every day, and in my case, I went to the gym because I would set my alarm to wake me every 90 minutes because if I got into too deep a sleep, I'd have these nightmares and they would last for days. And the worst of them came at around 3 a.m. So I would get up and I'd go to the gym at 3 and work, and I'd sleep sometime in the afternoon at 3 for a couple of hours. Very decisional. Number two, when I went looking for resources, there were none. This is 20 years ago. There were no books on the sexual abuse of men and boys. The only research really around PTSD at that stage even was coming out of the Napoleonic Wars, the Civil War in America, coming out of World War II, and it was in the military. It hadn't yet started to really come into mainstream in the United States. So I read everything I could on the sexual abuse of anyone or trauma per se, about 200 books. And I started to assemble this toolkit. And my understanding and revelation was that if every day I would rise and just try and develop one more tool for my toolkit, then at some point when I'd need them, I would have them. And so this tenacity, this resilience, this relentlessness was the only quality I had. Is I just didn't want to stay where I was because I was going to kill myself. And I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be the person who lost control emotionally, who couldn't handle himself, who raised his voice, who was angry because he was scared. I got sick of saying, "Sorry, Daddy's scared. Daddy's had nightmares. Daddy's seeing ghosts again." I got sick of that, and I wanted it to stop. So I just went after it.
Hello there. We'll get back to the conversation in just a sec. But first, I want to share about something that's very close to my heart right now. I've been working with the Soul Alignment Method and Miles Trainer, who's been a guest on this podcast for the last number of years. And through that work, I've really learned how to uncover my own purpose, the elements of my own unique purpose blueprint, and now to help others do the same. And as part of Soul Alignment Method, the vision is a world where everyone knows who they are, why they are here, and can live it in this lifetime. This allows us to really make decisions that are in our highest alignment around career, around relationships, around lifestyle, location, and around our physical health and all the other areas of our life. I would like to offer to listeners of this podcast a completely free or donation-based initial session for 90 minutes where we go deep and draw out from within the unique elements of your soul's purpose, your purpose blueprint. If this is something that's interesting to you, you can visit my website at www.humankinder.com.au and contact me there, or go to the link tree in the description, which has all the links and my WhatsApp. And I would absolutely love to work with you on this if it feels in alignment. Thank you. And now back to the show. Yeah. Do you know what I think is so precious in that is like, there's something there, like there's a spark somewhere. It's like when you hit that bottom, like it's almost like there's something just goes no more. It's like there's a moment. It's just like, and maybe it happens gradually over time. Maybe it happens all in one moment, but there's something in us at a human level, and perhaps it comes from the soul, but it's like this refusal to suffer anymore. It's like, I just cannot take it anymore. And like that moment, it's almost like, it's like a crucifixion, you know, it's like everything that you thought you were and you were holding on to, it's just like, I have to let go. And you're humble to such a point where you're just like, I will do whatever it takes. I will learn whatever I need to learn. I will go wherever I need to go to be free of this. And when you get that willingness, it's like your recovery cannot be denied, right? Because you will find it, right? And so like you start assembling all these tools, and like that act of going to the gym is like an act of self-love. It's like, it's making me feel better. What were some of the things that you found were like, right, no, this was really, really powerful, right? You maybe started off with, you know, some stuff, you're trying all these different things, and then maybe you find some things that are like, nah, these are the things that really helped me. Do you have a couple of core things?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, I do. And every one of them was an experience that was followed by a reflection and followed by an application. And I developed a very simple thing called IRAT because I'd accumulated a lot of information, but it hadn't yet become a revelation. And I realized that when I found out something and I thought, that's for me, it still didn't change. It wasn't until I went, that's wow, that's for me. I need to apply this, that I saw the transformation. Information, revelation, application, transformation. The first and the starkest contrast I had was Snicker bars and M&Ms with little nuts in it, believe it or not. It was 10 a.m. I'd just flown into Chicago. I was speaking at a church up there, and I was feeling fantastic. I'd had an absolutely brilliant day. One of the very rare ones. This is 15 years ago or something, and it was that rare. I remember the day. I remember what it was like, the old musty smell of a Marriott hotel where the big tall plants in the middle and mold is growing everywhere, you know, one of those sorts of atriums. And I got there, the kitchen was closed. I got my Coke, my Snickers bar, and my whatever, and I went upstairs. 20 minutes later, I was standing at the balcony on the top floor, crying and suicidal, wanting to take my life. And I'm self-aware enough to go, hang on, what happened? I had a great flight. I got upgraded on my seat. I turned in here. I'm about to go do something I love. And now I want to kill myself? What the hell? And I thought the only thing that happened between the foyer and now was what I ate. And I started to do research into sugar, and red food coloring and orange food coloring. And I found out that the link between psychosis, anxiety, and paranoia between sugar and food coloring. This is 20 years ago. Now it's a common thing. Back then it wasn't. So I've now got inflammation, but now it's and revelation, and now it's application. At that point, the best thing I did for myself outside of the gym was change my diet. Those two things alone and the attempt to get good sleep probably improved my ability to live life by about 40 or 50%. And just that taking care of the micro. I've played a lot of semi-professional sports, boxing, rugby as a kid. The hardest thing I've ever done was bodybuilding because it was every meal, every mouthful, every day for 18 months. And it was the same attachment to discipline to that sport that I took to my mental health. Every meal, every mouthful, every day, because I couldn't afford to mess up one. So there's a combination of a couple of things. Number one, an understanding of food. And number two, the discipline to apply it, to personally own that this was my responsibility, not to put crap in my cake hole.
Yeah, I love that. So it's information, revelation, application, and transformation. I think that's
information, replication, leads to transformation.
I think that's so important because the information is now out there, right? And there's something about the revelation period where you have an insight, and that insight changes things because you can never go back and see things in a different way.
Yes.
But the insight itself is also not enough because that discipline to apply is so powerful because at the end of the day, right, you're reconditioning your nervous system. And when we have something in our nervous system, it's like at the start, the old pattern is like a super highway. And then this new pattern is like this little wallaby trail, that's coming around the side. And then through focus and intention of, no, I'm just going to focus on this and grow on that wallaby trail. And suddenly that starts to become bigger and bigger and bigger. And the old thing starts to die away when you starve it of attention. But that takes the embodiment stage takes a lot of time for people. And there's stuff you can that can help you with it. But how did you know that things were starting to truly become embodied?
So in this whole phase of starting to realize that I've got to move from having excuses to reasons for what I did, I now understood why I behaved it, way I did. And that was either going to be an excuse or a reason, which was another decision I had to make. I will not allow these things to be excuses. I will allow them to be reasons. And so now come forward, nothing ever happens instantaneous. You'll never fully recover. What you do is you get better at managing this level of trauma. So come forward, and I'm in America, I'm in Texas, which is where all this stuff sort of happened. And I took up flying a private plane, want to fly a plane. And my instructor taught me a simple lesson. He said, when you take off and you're going somewhere, if you're off by a single degree over time, you're going to be hundreds and hundreds of miles away from where you need to be. What we want to do in the West, particularly in America, is we want to put the food in and push popcorn 30 plus seconds. And it's instantly we get that result. And that's how we want to treat life. It just never happens. Even when it comes to recovery, we want to buy the book, attend a seminar, go see a therapist. They do it all for us. And somehow we just reap the magical benefits. It's never going to happen. So what I did is I started to develop this IRAT model. And I started to understand that I had to have reasons, not excuses. And then I gave myself permission to fail. People talk about 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Wasn't good enough for me. I had to give myself permission to crawl in inches. And so I looked at my life, and I think we have a tendency to overestimate what we can do in 12 months and underestimate what God can do in 10 years. And so I said, all right, I'm just going to try and change. What if I just changed 1% a day? Well, that means I'd change 365% in a year. Well, that's impossible, not going to happen. What if I change 1% of my life a week? Well, that means in 2 years, I'd be totally transformed. yeah, ain't going to happen. It's just, not important. And then I gave myself permission to have the goal of 1% a month. And I gave myself permission to take 8 years to get there. And I can just tell you experientially, mate, I'm into my 16th year. And I've been through 2 complete revolutions. And by taking the pressure off and saying, John, it took you 45 years of being mucked up, not understanding, of living a life that just wasn't authentic to yourself. I'm giving you permission to take exactly the same amount of time to get better, which is another 45 years. And to be honest, I feel like it's taken me 15 and I've got my feet under me. And those small incremental positions, but you have to do it within the context of not making excuses, of taking responsibility and applying the little lessons that life and the divine, the creator, will show you as you go along.
Yeah, I love that. And I love when you're bringing in the divine, the creator. And I'm going to get into that later on because I really want to unpack that. But what I'm hearing in your kindness to yourself, right? Because at the start, I feel like when we try to change, we're trying to change because we hate ourselves, right? I remember myself being in the gym and I was doing it because I was overweight as a kid and I got a lot of shit for it. And then I was changing because I hated myself. And it's a dirty, dirty fuel, right? But what I hear for you, at a certain point, you're like, you start to change and grow because you love yourself, right? And it's a very different, much more sustainable fuel. And I just wanted to highlight that because I think you'll never get there 16 years if you're doing it because you hate yourself. It just doesn't last, and so I'm so curious about are there any more things that made a big difference for you? Like you mentioned therapy, you mentioned you hear a lot about, and I do this work sometimes with people also, deconditioning trauma, going back and using different techniques to go in and revisit memories and you hear EMDR techniques, and there are many different techniques out there. What is the role of actually directly going back on working on those traumatic memories been like for you? Has that been a part of your journey?
Sure. If I can caveat on one thing you talked about, and I thank you for your reflection that I'm kind to myself. I'm really not, brother. Melissa is kind to me. My wife, the previous administration, my previous wife, she was an encourager for me to end it all, and she didn't believe I'd ever get better. Melissa saw someone else's trash and she saw it as treasure. Melissa is the one who taught me to love myself. Melissa is the one that whenever I would speak poorly of myself, she would say, she'd hold my hand and she'd look at me and say, you need to stop talking to my best friend that way. And when I would be angry and others would run from me, she would walk towards me. When I hated myself, she would hold my hand. So I don't have parameters for self-love. I believe, if I'm being absolutely honest with you, I believe I am a stupid, fat, ugly, unintelligent man. I heard those voices and those words for too many years. But I've replaced that voice with another voice that says that I'm smart, I'm beautiful, and I'm loved. And that voice is the divine voice that speaks to me, and that voice through the wife of my wife. And when things are dark for me, which is often, and I can't find my way forward, I hear her voice. I literally hear her voice calling me forward. The power of a partner is something that is relegated in therapy to not being involved. It's all about this single silo, but we are not single silo organisms. The impact of a partner for positive or negative, the transformation of a life cannot be underestimated. And in all my process of self-work, it has been, I did the first half, the first 7 years, 5 to 7 years by myself. I've done the last 10 with Melissa. And, I sincerely give credit to where it's due, is her steadfast companionship through horrible times. She never knew John 1.0. She for some reason fell in love with this babbling, sobbing, snot-beard, crusty, stuttering mess, unemployed, living in an apartment with cement block bookcases and a fucking mattress on the floor. I was a college student, at 46. For some reason, she decided she was going to scrape it all together and put it on Black 13 and spin the wheel and go, yeah, that's mine. So the power of relationship, community, partnership, support. Now, back to your question of therapies that have helped. EMDR was very important to me, very useful. Having a therapist. But when I got my therapist, I told her very clearly I only wanted her for a brief period of time, and I gave her one job, and her one job was to give me the tools to succeed. She was not responsible for my success. She was not responsible for my recovery, and I really didn't want to see her after 90 days. Now, I'm not suggesting that's how you do it. Whatever. I'm a bit of a unit. I'm a bit strange that way. I needed to do this myself. So I got the tools and I got off my ass and I got it done. And I nearly didn't make it several times. But I knew that I could not be therapy dependent. And I knew I couldn't be medically dependent. So I did it without drugs. I did it without therapy. I didn't do it without support. I had support. I knew I needed that. So building a network, building a group of people who will love you in spite of and speak to your greatness. Because a lot of times when we're getting the process of recovery, we've got people who will look back and remember the guy who was broken and stop speaking to the guy that you want to be. And I've still got friends that have been with me for 15, 20 years through this process. They were there when I was a snotty, babbling mess. That is a gift. And they're still with me. I had one mate who didn't know what was wrong, put me on a plane, took me to Florida, put me in a hotel room, and didn't ask anything until I was prepared to tell him what happened to me as a kid. And he was the first person I spoke to. And he goes, yeah, well, fuck, that sucks. Do you want a beer? Yeah, okay. And that was it.
Oh, man.
That's man therapy, bro. It's like, fuck, that sucks, bro. You want a beer? Let's talk about something else. That's it, hey. And I've been talking to him about it for 15 years.
Yeah.
And he wants nothing but the best for me. And that's a rare commodity. It's a rare commodity.
I just, I'm deeply moved about what you've just shared because of the beauty and the purity of that love, that we have for the other. It's like, I remember a mentor of mine, he said to me once, he goes, someday you'll meet someone who will be the balm to all of your neuroses,
Yeah.
And like, I remember when I met my partner and I was like, she just loves me so much. Like, she just thinks I'm great, And I think I'm fucking useless, right? But she's looking at me be like, I'm obsessed with you. I love you so much. You're amazing. And I'm just like, there must be something here, And it's like,
you're blind or what?
Because that it's the lack of self-worth that is so difficult, whenever you're struggling. And I think the vast majority of people on this planet live with conditional self-worth, but it's about how severe is that conditional self-worth.
That's very good. That is very good, brother.
And it's like the other person who just like, it's almost like their soul sees your soul and they see the beauty and they see behind the words and behind all of the pain and everything. And they just see the light in you and the light in them sees the light in you. And it's like you're destined to meet and they're destined to be It's like the connection, like soul friends, soul family, soul love.
Yeah.
You know, John O'Donoghue, who's an old, he's actually dead now, but he was an ex-priest and a philosopher and a beautiful man. He talked about the Celtic, the Anam Cara, the soul friend, you know. And it's like someone who you meet and they just like, I know you, they get you, they hold you in that, and they might not even be able to hold themselves in that unconditional love, but they can access it with you. And it brings us really nicely into this like exploration into, as we grow from trauma and as we change and become more fully ourselves as a result of the pain, we start to attract into our lives others who are connected to that new version of ourselves and who are helping us move forward. And that's partners, it's friends, you know, it's also, as you talk about, it's ancestors, it's place. And so I'd love you to speak into that dimension of your healing journey where you are John 2.0 and suddenly you've got this desire to reconnect more fully with deeper parts of yourself. How did that start to play out for you?
I grew up with rumors and stories about there being Aboriginal people in our heritage. And I grew up, not being allowed to go into RSL clubs because I was too black. In America, I'm too white to be, black. And in Australia, I'm too black to be white. And so I grew up as a kid being kicked off beaches, kicked out of clubs. And it was just like, whatever, man. Like, no one ever talked about it. And they'll even deny the stories that my grandmother told me. They'll say, well, she just had Alzheimer's. Well, I know what she told me. I know the picture I saw. I know those things as well. And so my wife's Cherokee. So a black fella marries a red fella in Dallas, Texas, mate.
You
It's a
couldn't write
Hallmark
it.
story. You know what I mean? No, you couldn't, mate. So when about 4 years ago, we started taking her back to a Cherokee family to try and connect and reconnect because it was really, and we'd had these conversations. She's from South Carolina, good Southern girl. And I'd always talked about this, and she did what a good friend would do and someone who loves you does. She sat me down and said she'd love you, but you're full of shit sometimes. Any good partner will do that. She said, you've been talking about this Aboriginal thing ever since I've known you. I said, you need to answer this question because it's so important to you. It's so much a part of what you don't know about yourself. He said, you got to do one or two things. You either need to answer it for you or you need to forget it. Because this has been a constant thing that is pulling you back and holding you back from going forward. So we decided we'd answer it. We'd take a chance. We didn't have nowhere to start. There was no way I could do it. My birthing records are a mess. I tried the government agencies. We literally flew to Australia on the belief that somehow the creator would show us where to go, and he did. And I walked off the plane the very first day I was there. I had this auntie who was doing an art show walked up and she said, cousin, where's your mob? And I burst into tears and I said, I don't know, auntie, I'm trying to find them. She goes, it's okay. They're singing you home. Now, if you're not Aboriginal, if you're not Mbrani, then you won't understand what that means and the truth we hold that to be. I had dreams of an old lady sitting in a circle painting, singing to me. And I was sitting on the back of a turtle. Now, America is known to the Indigenous people here as Turtle Island. And I was sitting and riding on a turtle and off into the darkness, and this will sound weird, I don't know. I mean, I hope your audience can
Perfect. Perfect.
And I'm sitting off in the distance, and there's a lady sitting around a fire with stark white hair, painting on the sand, drawing in the sand, singing a song with clapsticks. Couple of things. Clapsticks to the Warramunga people of this song. I met this lady, Auntie Penny, in the Warramunga, the Arts Centre in the Barclay Rouge. And when I met her, I said, Auntie, I know you. You've been singing. You've been singing me out. Goes, yeah, Jongarai. Yeah. Now, you got a smoke? That was it. Like, here I am having the greatest revelation of my life. She wanted a smoke, and she wanted me to take her to the BP station. So it's like, okay, here I've had this divine moment and Auntie Penny wants to go for a smoke. All right, Auntie Penny, we're going to go get some smokes. And my entire time, that first trip back, I travelled New South Wales for 5 weeks. Me and Melissa we went camping. We were handed from people to people to people. And I remember walking into a government agency called Leak Up in New South Wales, and they looked at me and said, because black fellas can do it, mate. I got a big black fella nose. They looked at me and said, he's probably Tasmanian. Nah, he could be desert people. And these people are talking about me in third person, arguing about who I'm going to be. And they all decided I needed to meet Uncle so-and-so. So here I am in Nimbin. Once every 50 years, there's this Nimbin convention where all these weird weed smokers from the 60s get together, smoke way too much grass and shrooms, and every Indigenous leader from the place comes around. So I just happened to be 4 hours drive from the one place where it was happening at the one time in 50 years where all these Indigenous leaders were going to be there to celebrate. And I walked into a tent, and this man stood up, my brother, and he pointed at me and said, I know you. I've been waiting for you to come home. And it was like, okay. And if you see a picture of us, we're all different shades of whatever. But brother, we've got that same nose, that same forehead. We've got that thing is a thing, man. And that to go from orphan to tribe, it's very expensive at Christmas time. But to go from orphan to tribe, I mean, it's a total trip, brother. You never knew what you needed until you had it. And then you realize it's the most precious thing that you could ever receive.
Yeah, I think this is such an overlooked, an underrated aspect of what it means to live a powerful human life, and also what it means to reconnect with yourself and recover from trauma, and to not only start to heal the wounds of the ancestors, but also receive the gifts of the ancestors, because they come hand in hand. And, when I look at the world today and I see the globalization, right? You're in America, where I'm here, and I'm in Australia, I'm Irish, and there's all of these people just displaced, right? And intellectually, it's like, oh, it's all beautiful and we're all doing this. But like at a heart level, at a body level, at a soul level, so many of us are just estranged from our ancestral lineages. We've got no connection, and our parents didn't have much connection. And so, like, what would you say to people about, one, the importance of this, and the benefit it has on your life, but also then how they can start to reconnect more with lineage, with place, whether they're Aboriginal or Indigenous or not?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And my thought in this process is that we are all Indigenous. The Creator is Indigenous. He chose one people. He gave them one land. He said, this is yours. You're my people. This is your land. So from the very concept of the Creator creating the garden, Adam and Eve, they had a place and a function within that. You're Irish, man. You're so Irish. Like, you're like the Irish
So
style.
for
Like, you've
sure.
got the hair, you've got the name. How the hell do I pronounce that thing I say? Kakayan. So whatever it is, it's like, you are. And when I talked to you, when we had the pre-interview, and you talked about Ireland, you talked about it with such a passion and a love that was far beyond location. It was soul. And I've talked to other brothers that have gone to Ireland, Irish men who have gone to Ireland. They said there's something when you step out and you step into Dublin and you hear, it's like this one brother of mine, he was born up in Minnesota, went to Ireland. He's a Gawley. And for the very first time, he said he felt for the very first time in his life that he was home. And I think with your point of globalization, we all want to travel and be somewhere because we can. But there is something, if you have a concept of what it is for ancestor and a concept of place, your body literally, metaphysically and physically, is DNA wired to a particular location. There's something that I got when I walked on soil in Warramunga that I've never had in my entire life, and I can't explain it to you. I can't talk. It's hard to explain seeing ancestors, feeling the ground talk to you, knowing that this is where, what country and home, my manu, my country, Kari Manyawani, a man who comes up from the red dirt, what that means. When it's never had a meaning in my life before, all it was an absence. And we talked before when we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, to hear you talk of Ireland was to hear a son talk of his mother and his father. And there is that place. And if people would just relax a little bit and just give themselves to a little bit of tree huggery and understand metaphysically that it's quite possible that you can belong in a couple of places, the place you live and the place you're from, and they're not in competition with each other. And to go back and to visit those people and to appreciate where you've come from instead of being shamed or embarrassed by it. When Melissa goes back to South Carolina, there is a peace she gets in her heart. Her voice slows down, her cadence slows down, and she's with her people. Now, we might live in Dallas, but her people, her Cherokee mob, are from South Carolina. You can never take that from her. You wouldn't want to, because it actually completes her and makes her. And I think it's the understanding and the acceptance in a world where we're supposed to have all the answers and to have arrived somewhere, that if we could just admit long enough that there's lack in our life, and that lack can only be completed in ways that are outside of objects. What you can pay for can always be replaced. It's what you can't buy that is the most precious of all.
Hello there. Just a quick one from me. If you're enjoying this conversation, the biggest thing that you can do to support the show is to hit the follow button if you're on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, and please do rate 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and give us a like. All of these things are completely free. They really support our growth, and they also make sure that you get notified of any new content that comes out, so you don't miss a thing. Also, if you're interested, you can follow Humankinder on Instagram at human_kinder, where I'm posting many different clips across different episodes and sharing content along the journey. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your listening. And now back to the show. Yeah, I love that. And when you're making me homesick now. But because my connection to leave Ireland, right? It's interesting to leave Ireland to then have enough space inside yourself and inside your life to then turn back and start to heal some of the pain that you accumulated there, and then appreciate the gifts of the place. I think there's a necessary distance for those of us who need to get away. But once you start to reconnect, and I want to throw something into the mix here, because my reconnection, a lot of it has been done from in the inner world, not actually in the geographical location. But what I've realized about my own journey of healing trauma and learning, and I guess you could say it's called healing trauma. You could say it's also learning soul lessons. You could say that there's different ways you could look at it. But what I've realized is that from a soul perspective, I can connect to the souls of my ancestors. I can do that, doesn't have to be in time and place, because it exists outside time and place. And so when I go back inside in meditation and I get into a state beyond words, and I start to connect with my parents, I invite their presence in, their parents, the ancestors, I can intuitively understand and learn, and I can feel what they felt in their bodies, in my body. And that's how I've been able to heal and learn a lot of lessons and also pull in the gifts, right, from them too. And so it doesn't always necessarily, I think, have to be that you travel to the place. Although when you get your feet on the ground in the soil, that's a beautiful aspect of it as well. And so just recognizing that, as you said, like this life is so much more mysterious than we can imagine. And we exist on many different levels. We exist on the human level, right here, we're talking right now. We exist on the soul level, right, that maybe has gone through many human lifetimes. And we exist on the level of the divine. And to be able to work with and operate on all of those levels without losing yourself in any one and starting to fall into dogmatic ways of seeing the world, I think is a potential that we all have. And it's a potential that we can all develop. And so you've mentioned a few times here this, you're dropping in between the human level where you need all this resistance, the soul level where you kind of need this sort of surrender into, I'm just being guided by auntie here and there, and we're going, and it's like, it's all perfect, it's all beautiful. And then the divine, who over 10 years has a plan for you to recover. Could you speak into a little bit about, I guess, tripping between those levels and how that has played a role in your recovery and growth?
I think I'm a
Mhm.
Christian man. My doctorate is in theology. I tell people it's turning shit into fertilizer. I think that's probably a more accurate description. And I'm a very conservative Christian, Bible believing Christian. I'm all that sort of stuff. But I'm a very spiritual Christian. I had spiritual encounters from the first series of things I remember. In the midst of my darkest times, I had my greatest encounters with the Father, with the Creator. I think when I came to a realization that it's not shifting between levels and stages, that it is all one, when I came to understand and be at peace with that, I got at peace with everything. Nothing I experienced in Australia amongst my people was contrary to my theology. And I am a very conservative, reformed theologian. Now that's going to strike that a lot of people, just forward the hate mail to me. I'll take care of it. They're not going to have it. But we have no challenge with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and digging the wells of our fathers and honoring our fathers. And we're actually not saying any different. When you're sitting and talking and thanking your parents and thanking your ancestors, you're not worshiping them. You're talking and communing with a memory that's long. And when I walked amongst my people, it actually gave me greater permission to be spiritually attuned to what was around me, more so than any other church I've actually walked into. The only other time I've felt as much freedom is where I'm by myself in my shed, where I sit and I commune with the greater, the hereafter, the here and now, the was before, in conversation, which is another thing people think it's weird, but it's just a reality. It's just the truth of it. We are so wrapped up with what we can smell, touch, and taste that we miss the majority. And quantum physics has proved all of this out. We're in multiple places and multiple times. It has proved it doesn't contradict the Bible if people would look long enough and hard enough. God created and spoke, and creation is still happening. It wasn't a one-time effort. His word went forward, frequency went forward, and the continual act of creation and replenishing is going on. If we would understand that our life existence is not static, I believe that we are given one life and then the judgment. So that's, we might differ on that, we may not, I'm not sure. But I understand I've got one walk. I don't think I've walked before. I don't think I'll walk again. I certainly don't want whoever this is in whatever form to go out again. I want out of here, mate. I want to go through the high-five my son, sit there in glory and go fishing with Jesus on some lake somewhere. But I understand the older I get, the less superstitious I become. And I think superstition is what we grow up with in a lot of religious environments as opposed to spirituality. And when we can get comfortable with having conversations about things we don't understand with an inquiring mind of non-judgment, then we start to open ourselves up to learning. Now, is that going to trip me over my fundamental belief? No, because I know who I am and I know what I believe. But brother, since we last talked, and I said this, I'm not blowing, smoke up your skirt or your kilt or whatever the equivalent is. All I know is it was a profound conversation because I was talking to someone I thought I'd always known because we were talking to things that have always existed. And so there comes this resonance of soul. And if you can connect with people like that on that level, then the quality of your life and your experience in the here and now becomes eternal. And it moves outside of time and place. And it's just really groovy, man. Like, it's just a really groovy thing.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like, it's almost like if you were to go back to John 1.0 and try to explain to him what the experience of John 3.0 could be like, there's no way he'd believe it could get as good as it could get, right? Because he'd have no experience of what it's like to live in these different states or to live with those truths. And I think to pick up on one of your points, when is the moment that superstition, right, actually becomes spirituality is when there's a direct felt experience of that union. And what Christ said so beautifully is, I and my Father are one. The kingdom of heaven is inside me. He wasn't talking about him being special. He wasn't talking about something out there. He was saying that we can all experience the kingdom of heaven inside ourselves. And until you have had some of those experiences or hints of those experiences, then all you're doing is you're working off what your mind is telling you about what those words are saying. And it's a superstitious place to be in, because at the end of the day, you're comparing doctrines with people. You're comparing, well, I was told this and this is my belief and all of these things. And so I would love to hear from you like a little bit about what some of those experiences were, that allowed you to, like, you talked about conversations with God sitting in your shed, and like, what are some of more of these spiritual, I guess, experiences? I don't want to call them powers or cities, but I want to call them like abilities or tools. What are the spiritual tools that you've developed in your toolkit?
You can't hear God in white noise. You have to be in a place of quiet and contemplation. I got a very simple ritual. It's coffee. It's Christ coffee and cigars every morning. I sit in my shed. I got a great Turkish coffee machine. Jesus loves coffee. He likes it black with just one sugar, normally coconut sugar, because the wife and the cardiologist says I can't have anything else. I don't know. I'm discussing that with God at the moment. So, and he's winning. Well, my wife's winning. God's on her side. She's pretty much sure it is a favorite. Listen, it's not marriage counseling. Let's move on. So, Christ coffee and cigars. I sit in my shed. I make a coffee. I have a cigar, and I read my Bible, or I read a spiritual book that I'm reading at the time. It's a habit and discipline over time. Spirituality is a habit and discipline over time. When the superstitious comes in, it comes based on works and not on grace. It comes based on, I have to do this. And you're a good Irish Catholic boy, I'm sure. You understand, man, you got to work for everything. Bro, you guys got to work so damn hard to get into heaven. You need to hang out with some Protestants. We'll hit you on the grace bus, you know what I mean? Hitch along to the grace caboose, mate. I got you covered. So you got to work for everything. And we do that in Pentecostal, in Protestant faith. It's the same thing. It's all works-based. And we don't understand that the free gift of grace is unmerited favor. I did nothing to deserve the life I've got. And I'm talking about the recovery. There are a lot of people who've been in situations worse than mine and haven't had the blessing of the recovery I've got. I am grateful for what I've been through because I've experienced grace and unmerited favor to a level that people unfortunately never would. Now, I would never want anyone to go through what I did as a child. But I pray, brother, that everyone gets to experience what it is like to have a conversation with the divine. And I believe firmly, if you will clear some room in your clutter and just give space, we talk about holding space for each other, whatever. I don't understand. I'm Gen X. We don't understand shit like that. But when it comes down to holding space, I mean, putting bookends of no, do not disturb, and sitting and giving room for opportunity and conversation. Like we do to people who love us, so we should do with the divine, with the creator. It's okay, Father, here is some space. I want to see, and I want to give you an opportunity to speak and put yourself in a position to listen. And I heard you beautifully describe your meditation as a process of making room and holding space for conversation. And it is the greatest practice I've ever tried to achieve and fail daily at. And it is the one thing I know that I will hallmark my life. And I hope I get better at doing less in that space. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I hope.
Yeah. I mean, it's the arc of the absolute pain, right, in the early years, like, and the wounding, and how it's such a catalyst, because the grace of being given the challenges, and that can be controversial to say, but the grace of being given the challenges and the grace of being helped and shown how to heal those challenges and continue to work, connect in and stabilize yourself at the human level, connect into the deeper parts of yourself and soul, connect with ancestors and connect with the divine and continue to go on that. It's such grace, because when you ask the question, why do some people turn and really improve over time when they're really challenged and come to a point where they're John 3.0 and they're just like, wow, this is beautiful. And why do others deteriorate and deteriorate and deteriorate and get smaller and smaller and smaller and get hurt more and more and more? The only good answer that I found for that question is destiny. It's grace in a way. And it's quite an interesting thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on surrender, to the divine, the connection with it, the ideas about destiny, and just saying, at the beginning I thought I was doing it all, and like I'm this separate doer and I'm doing it all and it's so hard and I'm resilient against life and I'm just, if I keep fighting then I'll win someday. And what I hear in your journey is like, at a certain point that got you so far, but then you went, you know what, actually, God, you're doing it all. It's like, and as you did that, more and more ease started to come into your experience, and more lightness, maybe, and joy. And you realize, I can have a coffee and a cigar and I'm not going to hell, no? Because understand the state of communion, the state of divine communion, the state of being in flow with the divine. And so, yeah, I'd love to understand that, how that inner connection has emerged and informed your life.
You got time for one more story then?
As much time as is needed, brother.
It was a dream. I was writing a book and I had a dream one night. And in this dream, there was this lake that sat in the valley of a mountain. And it was a lake that had been dammed, and there was this river that ran to the coast. And I knew that this river went to the coast, and that was destiny. That was the outcome of my life. And on this river, there was this beautiful, like, 1930s, 1940s speedboat. You know, those groovy, really sleek, sexy wooden ones, you know? And I was taking my family down to this boat, and I got them all in there. I put everyone in the boat, and we had all the lunch, and we had all this. And here I was, and I was in charge of this boat, and I was just taking them from one side to the other and back again as fast as I could. And then I decided I want to go down the rapids, and I took them down the rapids, and there was this rapids that led into this river, and the hull broke up, and people were thrown out, and people were hurt. And, you know, God spoke to me, and he said, you want to be the captain of your own ship. He said, the challenge with that, and you want to fill it with the people, and you want to take them on a journey, and you want to be in charge. He said, the challenge with that is it's all good and perfect when the lake is crystal clear and fine and there's no storms and there's no rocks. He said, the moment you get into the rapids of life, your life will explode. He said, what you need is a raft. He said, you need a raft, and you're still responsible for putting the right people on the raft. And it was like this whole dream thing happened, and I saw myself going down the rapids, and we'd come to another rapid, and as a team, we would get up and we'd walk our raft around the rapids, and we'd put it was a particular like an old 1940s World War II rubber dinghy, whatever. I got a fancy 60s boat, and now I've got a rubber dinghy, and we're carrying this rubber dinghy up around the rapids, putting it back in the water, and we're going with it. Now, we all had a responsibility to row. We could all do things, but we were basically following the flow of water, and the people that were in the raft, they were the people that I'd chosen to walk with at this particular stage. And in the dream, at different stage and different rapids, people would get off and new people would get on, but we're all heading in this direction. And I realized that for my entire life, because I had to control my environment, because I had to control my emotions, because I had to protect myself, that I didn't have trust, and I couldn't trust people, and I never really had faith because I had to be in control of everything. And only in the total act of surrendering and trust that the divine God, the creator, my father, would take care of me, that he had already picked a place in the future for the outcome of my life, and he was responsible for getting me there. I was responsible for cooperating. At that moment, that shifted how I viewed and did everything. I went from needing a 5-year plan for needing nothing other than to get up and have Christ coffee and cigars. Every business opportunity I'm now experiencing is because I haven't actively pursued them. They've come to me because I was looking for the right relationships. I wanted to get the right people into my environment. I wanted to be with people who were positive. I wanted to be with people who believed in a future together. I wanted to be with people who wanted to build. And so that is an incredibly difficult thing to do, because not only alpha-driven personality type, but I was a fighter to survive. Sisu, relentless resilience, white-knuckled courage in the face of overwhelming odds. I will make it through to going, I can't control the rapids, but what I can control is my company and my attitude. And that shift has been the biggest and the hardest and the most fruitful and the most rewarding shift I've ever made.
Yeah, I love that metaphor of you're in this raft and you can white knuckle it. You really can, but you're going to end up in the same place, and you've just white knuckled it the whole time. And there's something incredible in what you shared, because the biggest fear of the ego is that if I let go of control, then I won't get what I want. I won't get what's needed for me. And the greatest irony is, as soon as you let go, suddenly the Lord puts you in the perfect place. And you're like, I can't believe how perfect this is. It's actually, and I said things I didn't even know I needed, but now I didn't even know I would love this so much. And here I am. And it's like, wow, that person came out of left field. And it's like, it's all so beautiful, right? And it's so funny because from an ego perspective, you're like, but that was my job. I was going to make it all happen. And then it's kind of like, all right, you don't need to do that. And the resilience starts to soften into surrender. And actually the discipline and the resilience
That's really good, man. That is really
the discipline
good.
and resilience starts to become on choosing to connect with that light in every moment. It's to choose that, because I think that's one of the things that, to make this practical for myself and for people, is that you described continuous showing up, having conversations with God, creating the space, asking, and tuning in to what's the voice of the noise and the fearful voice of the mind and the ego. And then there's a deeper voice or a deeper knowing, or I'd love to know how you experience it. But like, there's a deeper connection that you can use to discern where you should and shouldn't go, or who you should and shouldn't hang out with or talk to. What's that daily compass like for you? Or do you experience in that way or a different way?
But I think I'm at a stage now where I can just trust what I hear. I've learned, and Melissa again was my teacher. I can trust the voice of my wife. I know what it is now to hear the voice of the Father, and I just trust it. I am as relentless and resilient in pursuing my surrender as I was in pursuing my works. So I know that sounds a dichotomy for people, but I am so focused on not doing to the same level I was on doing. And so I don't believe I was ever asked to change my personality because it's the one I was gifted. And he's just said, okay, you're really good at doing this yourself, but why don't you be really good at like not? Just try, just try to be really stubborn at not doing anything. Bro, you serious, Lord? Okay. Okay, here I am. Okay, I'm doing really good at doing nothing. Can I do something? No, not yet. If you do it, you'll fuck it up. Okay, I'm not fucking it up. Here's another day. I've made it 24 hours without fucking something up. And so it's just accepting that as well, that I was made a certain way and he's not going to ask something of me that I can't do. In fact, I'm becoming more of who I really am by doing less, which is odd. But the whole thing is paradoxical. It's somewhat confusing if you try to think too much about it, and incredibly relieving if you can just go, okay, this is just, I don't know how, but it just works.
Yeah.
You know?
And the thinking about it actually is not so useful. It's like the feeling of that energy that you're sharing from. It's like if you're listening to this now and you get a sense of a lightness, you get a sense of a relief, you get a sense of an expansiveness, a joyfulness, a playfulness. It's like to trust that feeling and to follow it. And that is such a difficult thing because we've been taught not to listen to ourselves. But yet, when we get really quiet, we actually know the voice of truth. You know it when you want to speak truth yourself about how you feel, or you see another person, and we have this inner compass for truth, and I think all of us have it, and I think that's such an important skill to develop in your toolbox, is of starting to discern what that knowing of truth is and what's false. And following that above all else. I think, to summarize what you said, it was like, I choose that above all else. It's like in the Bible, it says, thou shalt have no gods before me. And when you go inside and you start to observe yourself, you go, I got a lot of gods. I got a lot of gods. I got this person needs to like me. I got money I need to have. I got all this sort of status stuff. It's like, God, I'm swimming in gods. You know what I mean? And I'm so ready to put them above you. It's like, I'll do it. And I'm a half Catholic, half Presbyterian mongrel, who never got any sort of spirituality from that experience in the church at all. I found it myself through meditation and through Eastern practices and through my own continuous inquiry. But I don't really think it matters where or how you come upon it. It's universally a human thing inside us all. And no matter what that looks like or feels like for you, whether you get it through whatever religion, from my perspective, once you find it, that's the main thing, I think, in this life. And so, yeah, it's been a beautiful pleasure to come together in that space with you today and to be able to share in that. And is there anything else that you would love to share to people, before we wrap this up?
No, brother, it's been great. We've launched a couple of programs online, one called the Phoenix Collective. I've taken all this $300,000 in 15 years worth of stuff, and we're basically giving it away for the cost of a lunch for lifetime. None of this subscription crap. Like, if you want to get in, normally it's like $99, but if they follow the link, it'll be $27 for life. 2-3 years worth of programs, everything that we put it down together that I've been through. 100 and something videos, different things that I've recorded. Because someone did that, and someone talked to me about it. They said, is this your legacy? I said, no, it's a bookend. I want it done. I want to put it together and give it away because I'm done with it. I want to have it in a place where people who need it can come and get it, and I'll instruct them. Because I'm going on to John 3.0, and John 3.0 is a writer, he's an author, that's his full-time job, and for the next 30 or 40 years, that's what I plan to do. So I want to give it away, man. If any of you people get on there and get after it, they can get it.
That's beautiful.
Do with
Do you
it.
know, that's what, people are often like, what does recovery mean? How do you mean to be recovered, And like this whole idea that you're someplace, if there's anything that is recovered, it's that you've reconnected to all parts of yourself and you're doing what lights you up in this lifetime and you're willing to prioritize that and go for it. And your relationships are thriving. The states you're experiencing every day are going up and up and up and up. And you're a testament to someone who's reaped the rewards of doing the work. And so, yeah, thank you for being a light in the world, brother. And I'll put all the links of all the stuff, your book, your poetry, all that stuff will be in the description. And if you'd want to connect to you, then I think that would be a good idea.
Thank you, brother. When I launch the books, I'm going to call you up and abuse a new friendship and do a virtual book tour with you. I'll come back on and launch some books. I'd love to show you folks what I'm doing. Brag a little bit about how, Christ, coffee and cigars and a book.
Yeah. We'll have lots of people with Christ, coffee, cigars and reading your poetry now all across Australia. Wouldn't that be a dream?
Bring it on, mate.
Yes, brother. Thank you for, being so real, my friend. Being so real and showing you that
thank you
spirituality is realness.
Thanks very much. Thank you.